Emma Rose Carter, when I find you tomorrow. Alice muttered, scrubbing at the waxy mess with a dish towel. Her back ached, her feet hurt, and her last can of coffee had run out 3 days ago. The twins' latest artistic masterpiece, what looked like a family of stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, would have been sweet if it wasn't covering the security deposit she'd never get back. Her phone buzzed against the counter. Alice glanced at the screen and saw Jake's contact photo, the same cocky smile that had fooled her 8 years ago. Her jaw clenched. 2 weeks late on child support again, and now he was texting at 2 a.m.? Probably drunk and feeling guilty. Without reading his message, Alice's fingers flew across the screen. Your kids are eating cereal for dinner again while you're probably buying rounds for your pack. Real alpha behavior, Jake. She hit send and went back to scrubbing, satisfaction warming her chest. Let him choke on that truth. The phone buzzed immediately. Alice wiped her hands on her pajama pants, the ones with holes in both knees, and picked up the phone, ready for Jake's usual excuses. My limo will be there in 20 minutes. We need to talk about the twins. She blinked at the screen. Jake didn't own a limo. Jake barely owned a working car. And since when did he want to talk about Alex and Emma? He'd seen them exactly 3 times in the past year. Her phone rang before she could type a response. Jake, what kind of game? This isn't Jake. The voice was deep, controlled, and carried an authority that made her spine straighten involuntarily. Though I'm very interested in discussing him with you. Alice's stomach dropped. I'm sorry, I think you texted about twins. About pack behavior. A pause. Who is this? Heat flooded her cheeks. Alice Carter. I was trying to reach my ex-husband about child support. I must have hit the wrong contact, Alice Carter. The man repeated her name like he was tasting it. And your ex-husband is Jake? Jake Morrison, yes. Look, I'm really sorry about the mix-up. It's late and I was angry, Anne. Don't apologize. You may have just solved a problem I've been working on for 2 years. The sound of a car door slamming came through the phone. My driver will be there shortly. Wait, what? No, I can't, I have kids sleeping, bring them. The line went dead. Alice stared at her phone, heart hammering. She scrolled to her recent calls and saw the number she'd accidentally texted. Her stomach lurched when she recognized it. She'd seen it on billboards across the city. Blackwood Industries. Which meant she'd just sent an angry text about cereal dinners and deadbeat dads too. Oh God. She sank onto her kitchen stool. I texted Dominic Blackwood. Everyone in the city knew that name. The youngest billionaire in the state's history. Owned half the downtown district. The business magazines called him ruthless. The society pages called him untouchable. The local gossip sites called him dangerous. And she'd called him out for not supporting his pack. A low rumble outside made her freeze. Through her thin apartment walls, she could hear Mrs. Doro's television click off. The elderly woman missed nothing that happened in their building. Alice crept to her window and peered through the blinds. A sleek black limousine sat at the curb like a predator, all tinted windows and gleaming chrome. It looked more expensive than everything she'd ever owned combined. Mommy? Zoe appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes. At 8, she was too observant for her own good. There's a fancy car outside. Are we in trouble? No, baby. Go back to bed. But Alex is asking about the car too. And Emma's awake. Zoe padded closer, her dark hair sticking up at odd angles. Did Daddy finally get a good job? Alice's heart squeezed. Her daughter still held hope that Jake would transform into the father they needed. It's not Daddy's car, sweetheart. Then whose? A knock echoed through their thin front door. Not the sharp rap of their landlord or the gentle tap of Mrs. Doro. This knock carried weight, authority, and an expectation of being answered immediately. Alice looked down at her coffee-stained pajamas, her bare feet, the the purple crayon still smudged on her fingers. This was not how anyone should meet a billionaire. Another knock, more insistent. "Stay here," she whispered to Zoe, who immediately crept closer to the window instead. Alice unlocked the 3 deadbolts Jake had insisted on and opened the door. The man standing in her hallway belonged in boardrooms and penthouse offices, not the cramped corridor of her rundown apartment building. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled power. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch, pale gray that seemed to look right through her. "Alice Carter?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I'm Dominic Blackwood." He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, something wild and earthy beneath expensive cologne. Something that made her pulse quicken for reasons she didn't understand. "We need to talk." "Mr. Blackwood, I'm really sorry about the text. I didn't mean to bother you." He held up a hand, and she fell silent. Those gray eyes were studying her face with an intensity that made her want to hide behind her door. "You mentioned Jake Morrison." His voice carried an edge now. "Tell me about your relationship with him." "He's my ex-husband. Father of my kids." Alice wrapped her arms around herself. "Look, I know this is weird, but I was just frustrated about child support and, what kids? My 3 children. Zoe's 8, and the twins, Alex and Emma, are 5. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Twins. 5 years old. It wasn't a question, but Alice nodded anyway. "And their father is Jake Morrison?" "Yes, but I don't understand why." Dominic stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He breathed in slowly, and she saw his pupils dilate. "You're not who I expected," he said quietly, his voice rougher now. Those pale eyes seemed to glow for just a moment in the hallway's dim light. "But you smell like pack." Before Alice could ask what that meant, Alex and Emma appeared behind Zoe, all 3 kids pressing close to see the stranger at their door. Dominic's gaze moved to the twins, and his entire body went rigid. "Dear God," he whispered. "They have his eyes." Alice's blood turned to ice. Whose eyes? But Dominic Blackwood was already reaching for his phone, his attention completely focused on her children. Whatever game Jake had been playing, whatever lies he'd told, Alice had the terrible feeling she was about to learn the truth. And from the look on the billionaire's face, that truth was going to change everything. Chapter 2. Alice had never been inside a limousine before, and under different circumstances, she might have been impressed by the cream leather seats and crystal decanters. Instead, she pressed herself against the far door, watching Dominic Blackwood with the wariness of a cornered animal. He'd given her exactly 3 minutes to get the kids settled with Mrs. Doro, 3 minutes to explain to her bewildered neighbor that she needed to watch 3 children while Alice went somewhere with a stranger. Mrs. Doro had taken one look at the limousine and shooed Alice toward it with a string of Mandarin that roughly translated to, "Don't be stupid, go." Now, as they glided through streets Alice recognized from the outside but had never traveled, she wondered if stupid was exactly what she was being. "You're afraid of me," Dominic said without looking away from the window. "Should I be?" He turned those pale gray eyes on her, and Alice felt that same strange flutter in her chest. "That depends on what Jake told you about me." "Jake never mentioned you at all." The admission felt like betrayal, though she couldn't say why. "He said he worked construction. Said he grew up in foster care, no family." Something dark crossed Dominic's features. "Jake Morrison has never told the truth about anything in his life." The limousine turned into a district Alice had only seen in magazine spreads, tree-lined streets with mansions set back behind iron gates, where old money lived alongside new power. She pressed her face to the window, watching pristine lawns and fountain courtyards roll past. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk without interruption." Dominic pressed a button, and the partition between them and the driver slid up. "Tell me about the twins." "Their birth." "The pregnancy." Heat climbed Alice's neck. "That's personal." "I'm afraid personal is all we have left." He leaned forward, and she caught that scent again, something wild that made her pulse quicken. 5 years ago, did Jake disappear for a period of time? Maybe a few days, maybe a week. Alice's breath caught. She remembered that time, remembered because it had been right after she'd found out she was pregnant. Jake had vanished without explanation, leaving her sick and terrified and alone. When he'd returned, he'd been different. Distant. Almost guilty. How did you know that? Because that's when he stole from me. Dominic's voice carried a weight that spoke of old wounds. Among other things. The limousine stopped in front of a mansion that looked like something from a fairy tale, all stone and arched windows and ivy climbing toward a slate roof. Alice had seen pictures of houses like this in magazines her clients sometimes left behind when she cleaned their offices. "This is your home?" One of them. Dominic was already getting out, moving around to open her door before the driver could. "Alice, before we go inside, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about your life." She remained in the car, suddenly terrified to move. "Then maybe I don't want to know. You texted me about pack behavior. About alphas." His hand extended toward her, and she noticed his fingers were longer than they should be, his nails just slightly too sharp. "Some part of you already knows." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Alice took his hand. The moment their skin touched, something electric shot up her arm. Dominic's pupils dilated, and for just an instant, she could have sworn his eyes flashed gold. He pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. "What was that?" "Nothing." But his voice was rougher, and he took a step back. "Let's go inside." The mansion's interior was all warm wood and rich fabrics, the kind of understated elegance that whispered rather than shouted its expense. Dominic led her to a study lined with leather-bound books, where a fire crackled in a stone fireplace despite the warm evening. "Sit." He gestured to a chair near the fire while he moved to a bar cart. "Do you drink?" "Not usually." Alice perched on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt. "Mr. Blackwood, Dominic." He poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. "We're past formalities." He handed her a glass, and Alice caught his scent again, stronger now, making her head spin. She took a sip and immediately regretted it as the liquor burned down her throat. "Tell me what you know about werewolves," Dominic said, settling into the chair across from her. Alice nearly choked on her second sip. "Werewolves? Shapeshifters. Pack animals. Creatures that live longer than humans, are stronger than humans, and have an unfortunate tendency toward territorial behavior." She set down her glass with shaking hands. "Are you asking me if I believe in fairy tales?" "I'm asking if you've ever noticed anything unusual about Jake." "Unusual strength, maybe. Better hearing than he should have. A tendency to disappear during certain times of the month." The questions hit too close to home. Jake had always been stronger than he looked, had always seemed to hear things she couldn't. And there had been those nights when he'd slip out after he thought she was asleep, returning before dawn with mud on his shoes and that wild scent clinging to his clothes. "You're insane," she whispered. 5 years ago, I was going through what my kind calls a mating heat." Dominic's voice was carefully controlled, but she caught the tension underneath. "It's a biological imperative that happens rarely, and when it does, it's overwhelming. I remember very little of those 3 days clearly." Alice's stomach churned. "What does this have to do with my children? I believe I may have fathered twins during that time." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. "These are the children I've been searching for." Alice's glass slipped from nerveless fingers, amber liquid soaking into the Persian rug. The photograph showed 2 children, a boy and a girl who looked exactly like Alex and Emma. Same dark hair, same bright blue eyes, same stubborn chin. "That's impossible." Her voice came out as a whisper. "The timeline fits. The location fits. And Jake Morrison was there that night, though I didn't realize it until much later." Dominic's gray eyes were fixed on her face. "Tell me, Alice. Do your twins have any unusual abilities? Do they seem to know things they shouldn't? Are they stronger than other children their age? Images flashed through Alice's mind. Alex lifting furniture that should have been too heavy for him, Emma always knowing when storms were coming hours before they hit, both of them sometimes finishing each other's sentences in a way that seemed almost telepathic. "This is crazy," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Jake found me during my mating heat. He'd been banished from my pack months earlier for theft and insubordination, but he came back that night. I was, not myself. Barely human." Dominic's hands clenched into fists. "I believe he brought someone with him. A woman. I have fragments of memory, nothing more. Even if that were true, which it's not, Alex and Emma are Jake's children. I was there when they were conceived." "Were you?" Dominic leaned forward. "Or do you remember Jake coming home after those missing days, different somehow? Changed? And then weeks later, you discovered you were pregnant?" Alice's world tilted. Because that was exactly what had happened. Jake had returned from his mysterious absence altered in ways she couldn't define, and it was only later that she'd realized she was carrying twins. "You're suggesting Jake, what? Brought me to you somehow?" "I'm suggesting Jake Morrison has been playing a very long game." Dominic stood and moved to the fireplace, his shoulders tense. "He stole money from my pack. He stole information. And I believe he may have stolen something else. The children in that photograph, where are they now?" "Missing." The word came out like a growl. "They were taken 2 years ago from their mother. She died trying to protect them." Alice's blood turned to ice. "Taken by who?" "I don't know. But I've been searching ever since." He turned back to her, and there was something predatory in his movement. "Your text tonight wasn't random, Alice. Someone wanted you to contact me. Someone who knew about Jake, about the twins, about all of it. That's paranoid thinking. Is it? How many people have Jake's number in their phone under his real name?" Alice frowned. "What do you mean, his real name?" "Jake Morrison isn't his birth name. He was born Jacob Fenris. Fenris was his pack name, his family name. Morrison is an alias." The room spun around Alice. Everything she'd thought she knew about her life, about her marriage, about her children's father, was crumbling. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Dominic moved closer, and that wild scent grew stronger. "Alice, your children may be in danger. If Jake took my twins, if he's been using you as cover all this time." His phone rang, the sharp sound cutting through the room like a blade. Dominic glanced at the caller ID and his face went granite hard. "Marcus." He answered on the second ring. "What is it?" Alice couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Dominic's expression grow darker with each passing second. "How many?" A pause. "Are you certain they're rogues?" Another pause, longer this time. "No, don't engage. Keep watching and wait for my orders." He ended the call and turned to Alice, his gray eyes now holding flecks of gold. "What's wrong?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "That was my beta, Marcus. Your apartment building is being watched. There are at least 6 werewolves positioned around the perimeter, and they're not from my pack." Alice shot to her feet. "My children are safe for now. Mrs. Doro's apartment faces the back courtyard, and my people have eyes on all the exits." But Dominic was already moving toward the door. "Someone knows you contacted me tonight, Alice. Someone's been waiting for this moment. I want to go home. Right now. I'm afraid that's not possible." He paused at the door, looking back at her with something that might have been regret. "Going back there now would put your children in direct danger." "From who?" "Jake. Among others." Dominic's phone buzzed with a text, and his face went pale as he read it. "Alice, I need you to look at something." He held out his phone, and Alice saw a message from an unknown number. "The Luna has awakened. Time to bring the families back together." You have 48 hours. Attached was a photograph that made Alice's knees buckle. It showed Alex and Emma asleep in Mrs. Dorot's living room, but standing in the shadows behind them were two other children, the boy and girl from Dominic's photograph. My twins, Dominic whispered. Someone has my twins, and they're in the same building as your children. Alice grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into expensive fabric. We have to go. We have to get them. We can't. Not yet. His hand covered hers, and again she felt that electric shock. Alice, whoever sent this message, they want us to come. They're counting on it. I don't care. Those are my babies. And they're using your babies to get to mine. Dominic's voice was gentle but implacable. Someone has been orchestrating this for 2 years, maybe longer. Your accidental text wasn't an accident at all. Alice sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. What do you mean? I mean someone has been watching you, watching your family, waiting for the right moment to bring us together. Dominic began pacing, his movement restless and predatory. Jake's disappearance, your financial struggles that led to anger and that text, even the fact that you selected the wrong contact, none of it was random. You're saying someone planned for me to text you by mistake. I'm saying someone planned everything. He stopped pacing and looked at her with those unsettling pale eyes. The question is why? What do they want with both sets of twins? Alice's phone buzzed. With shaking hands, she pulled it from her pocket and saw a text from an unknown number. Tell the Alpha that Jake sends his regards. The children are beautiful together, like one family. See you soon, Alice. The phone slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. Because she finally understood what Dominic had been trying to tell her. Jake hadn't just lied about his name, his job, his past. He'd lied about everything. And now, somehow, he had all 4 children. Dominic, she whispered. What if Jake is behind all of this? What if he took your twins 2 years ago and has been waiting for the right moment to collect mine too? The look that crossed Dominic's face was pure predator. Then he's made the biggest mistake of his very short remaining life. Chapter 3. The ride back to Alice's apartment building took 12 minutes, but it felt like hours. Dominic spent the entire time on his phone, speaking in clipped tones to people he called by single names: Marcus, Stefan, Elena. Alice caught fragments about perimeters and extraction protocols and safe houses, but her mind kept circling back to one horrifying fact: someone had her children. Mrs. Doro isn't answering her phone, Alice said for the 3rd time, clutching her cell so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marcus confirmed the children are still in the building, Dominic replied without looking up from his own phone. My people have visual. Your people? Alice turned in her seat to face him. How many people work for you? More than you'd expect. His gray eyes met hers briefly. Alice, when we get there, I need you to let me go first. If Jake left any surprises, I'm not hiding behind you while my children are in danger. You're not hiding. You're being smart. Dominic's voice carried that note of absolute authority she was beginning to recognize. Jake knows you're with me now. He's had hours to prepare. The limousine turned onto Alice's street, and her heart sank. 3 black SUVs were parked at various points along the block, and she could see figures in dark clothing stationed near building entrances. It looked like a crime scene. This is going to be all over the neighborhood gossip network by morning, Alice muttered. Let them talk. Dominic was already getting out before the car fully stopped. Rumors are the least of our problems. Alice's building looked the same from the outside, same cracked concrete steps, same rusted fire escapes, same flickering hallway light visible through the glass door. But when they reached the 4th floor, Alice's stomach dropped. Her apartment door hung open, revealing chaos beyond. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, papers scattered across the floor. The purple crayon masterpiece on her kitchen wall had been obscured by deep gouges in the drywall, gouges that looked suspiciously like claw marks. Oh no, Alice breathed, stepping toward the destruction. Dominic's hand shot out, stopping her. Don't touch anything yet. A man emerged from her apartment, tall, lean, with sandy hair and sharp green eyes. He moved with the same predatory grace as Dominic, but where Dominic commanded through presence, this man seemed to melt into shadows. Alpha, the man said, nodding to Dominic. The apartment's clear, but you need to see this. Alice, this is Marcus, my beta, Dominic said. Marcus, Alice Carter. Marcus studied her with those unsettling green eyes. The human. Half human, Dominic corrected, and Alice felt her world tilt again. What did you find? Marcus led them into the apartment, careful to avoid the worst of the debris. Alice's heart broke seeing her children's toys scattered and broken, the family photos torn from their frames. Definitely werewolf, Marcus said, pointing to the claw marks on her door. But not just any werewolf. These marks are territorial, someone claiming space. Jake, Dominic said grimly. Jake was here? Alice picked up a torn photograph of the twins on their last birthday, trying to piece it back together with shaking hands. When? Within the last hour, Marcus replied. His scent is still strong. Alice looked up from the photograph. You can smell him? Enhanced senses, Dominic explained. Part of what we are. What we are? Alice's voice pitched higher. I'm not a werewolf. I'm just Alice. Dominic moved closer, his voice gentle. Your scent has been changing since we first met. Something in you is awakening. Before Alice could process that terrifying statement, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mrs. Doro appeared in the doorway, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes wide with fear. Alice. Thank goodness you're safe. The elderly woman rushed toward her, then stopped short when she noticed Dominic and Marcus. These men came looking for you. They said you were in trouble. Where are the children? Alice asked. In my apartment. They're frightened, but unhurt. Mrs. Doro's voice shook. Alice, what's happening? Men were watching the building, and then your door, the sounds. It's complicated, Alice said weakly. The children are asking for you, Mrs. Doro continued. Especially Zoe. She keeps saying she had another bad dream about wolves. Something cold settled in Alice's stomach. What kind of dreams? She's been having them for weeks. She says she dreams she's running through forests, talking to animals. Mrs. Doro frowned. I told her it was just her imagination, but she's so specific about details. Alice felt Dominic go very still beside her. Mrs. Doro, could you bring the children here? I need to see them. Alice, Dominic said quietly, I think we need to talk to Zoe. 10 minutes later, all three children sat on Alice's couch, or what remained of it after Jake's visit. Zoe held Alex and Emma close, her 8-year-old face serious and protective. The twins looked smaller than usual, their blue eyes wide and scared. Mommy, Emma whispered, why is our house broken? Someone was looking for something, Alice said, kneeling in front of them. But you're all safe now. The man with the scary eyes, Alex said. He was here before. Alice's blood chilled. What man? The one who smells like the forest, Zoe said matter-of-factly. Like in my dreams. Dominic moved closer, his voice carefully gentle. Zoe, can you tell me about your dreams? Zoe studied him with Alice's dark eyes, then glanced at her mother. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. I dream I'm running really fast through trees. Faster than people can run. Zoe's voice grew smaller. And sometimes I dream I have fur and paws instead of hands and feet. Alice's world tilted dangerously. Zoe, and there are other wolves in the dreams. They talk to me, but not with words. I understand them anyway. Zoe looked directly at Dominic. You smell like them. Like pack. Marcus made a low sound in his throat. Alpha, not now, Dominic said sharply, never taking his eyes off Zoe. Honey, in your dreams, do you ever see children who look like Alex and Emma? Zoe nodded vigorously. The lost ones. They're sad because they can't find their daddy. Alice felt the room spin around her. Lost ones? In my dreams, there are 4 of us who are supposed to be together. Me and Alex and Emma and... Zoe frowned. 2 others. A boy and a girl who look like the twins but older. Older? Dominic's voice was barely controlled. Maybe 6 or 7 now? Zoe shrugged. I don't know how I know that. Alice looked at Dominic, seeing her own shock reflected in his pale eyes. The children in the photograph, how old would they be now? 7, Dominic said quietly. If they're alive. They're alive, Zoe said with startling certainty. I can feel them sometimes. They're scared and want to come home. Alex suddenly perked up. Like when we can feel each other? Emma nodded. We always know when the other one is sad. That's normal for twins, Alice said weakly. Is it normal for them to know things before they happen? Mrs. Doro asked. Yesterday Emma told me it would rain 30 minutes before the first clouds appeared. Or for Alex to lift furniture that should be too heavy for him. Zoe added. He moved your dresser last week when you were at work, Mommy. Alice stared at her children, really looked at them. Alex's unnaturally bright blue eyes, Emma's uncanny ability to predict weather, Zoe's dreams that were apparently more than dreams. How had she missed the signs? Alice, Dominic said gently, we need to discuss some things privately. She nodded, turning to Mrs. Doro. Could you take them back to your apartment for a few minutes? I want to stay with you, Zoe said firmly. The man with the scary eyes might come back. What man? Dominic's voice sharpened. Zoe, describe him to me. Tall like you, but thinner. Brown hair, blue eyes like Alex and Emma. He smelled angry. Zoe wrinkled her nose. And he kept calling me and the twins his cubs. Alice's blood turned to ice. Jake. Jake was here and saw the children. When? Marcus demanded. Before the nice men came to watch the building, Mrs. Doro said. Maybe an hour ago? He said he was their father, that he had permission to see them. Did he touch them? Dominic's voice carried a dangerous edge. He tried to pick up Alex, Zoe said. But Alex bit him. You bit your father? Alice asked. Alex nodded proudly. He tastes wrong. Like lies. Emma made a face. Bad man. Not really our daddy. Alice felt pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. Not really their daddy? What do you mean? Daddy smells different now, Emma said. Like someone else wearing his skin. The room went absolutely silent. Alice looked at Dominic, seeing something like recognition dawn in his eyes. That's not possible, Alice whispered. Actually, Marcus said grimly, it is. If he's been working with someone powerful enough, long enough, Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went rigid. Alice, you need to see this. He held out his phone, showing a video message. Alice's hands shook as she pressed play. Jake's face filled the screen, but something was different about him. His features were sharper, more predatory, and his blue eyes held a coldness she'd never seen before. Hello, Alice. Hello, old friend. Jake smiled, and Alice saw his canine teeth were longer than they should be. I trust you've had an enlightening evening. The camera panned to show 4 children sitting in what looked like a warehouse. Alice's heart stopped as she recognized Alex and Emma, but sitting beside them were 2 other children, the boy and girl from Dominic's photograph. As you can see, I've brought our families together at last, Jake continued. Alice, meet your stepchildren. Children, say hello to Daddy's old pack leader. The older twins, Dominic's children, looked directly at the camera with eyes that held too much knowledge for their age. The boy mouthed, help us, while the girl pointed to something off camera. Here's how this is going to work, Jake's voice continued. Alice brings herself and her 3 cubs to the location I'm about to send. In exchange, everyone gets to live. You have 48 hours before I disappear with all 4 children forever. The video cut to black, then a text appeared with GPS coordinates. He has them, Alice whispered. He has all of them. Not for long, Dominic said, his voice carrying a promise of violence. But Alice was staring at the phone screen, realizing something that made her blood freeze. Dominic, the video, when Jake panned to show all 4 children, what about it? Zoe wasn't there. He only has 3 of my children. Alice looked at her oldest daughter, who was watching them with those 2 knowing dark eyes. He doesn't know about Zoe yet. Because she's been hidden, Marcus said suddenly. Her scent is different. More human. Which means she's our advantage, Dominic said grimly. Jake thinks he has all the children, but he doesn't know about the one who can dreamwalk between them. Alice looked at her 8-year-old daughter, seeing her with new eyes. Zoe, in your dreams, can you talk to the other children? Zoe nodded. Sometimes. The lost ones are scared, but they're brave too. And Alex and Emma, they're trying to be strong. Can you tell them we're coming? Dominic asked. I can try. Zoe's small face was serious. But the bad man might hear too. He has wolf ears now. Alice felt the last pieces of her normal life crumble away. Her ex-husband was a werewolf. Her children were half werewolf. She was apparently becoming a werewolf herself. And now the man she'd thought she'd loved for years had kidnapped 4 children and was demanding she trade herself for their lives. Dominic, she said quietly, what exactly was Jake to you? Before he went rogue? Dominic's expression went granite hard. Jake was my beta. My second in command. I trusted him with everything, pack business, pack security, even my children when their mother died. His voice dropped to a growl. He was like a brother to me. And he betrayed all of us. Alice closed her eyes, finally understanding the scope of Jake's deception. How long has he been planning this? Years, Marcus said grimly. Has to be. The financial theft, the kidnapping, finding you and using you as cover, it's all connected. But why? Alice opened her eyes to find Dominic watching her with an expression she couldn't read. What does he want? Revenge, Dominic said simply. And to create his own pack with stolen children as his legacy. Alice's phone buzzed with a new text from Jake, time's ticking, Alice. Don't make me wait too long, the children are asking for their mommy. Attached was another photo showing Alex and Emma crying, reaching toward the camera. I'm going, Alice said, standing up. I'm going to get my children. We're going, Dominic corrected. And we're going to end this once and for all. But as Alice looked at the photo of her terrified children, she realized that whatever happened in the next 48 hours would determine not just their survival, but the kind of life, human or otherwise, they'd have afterward. There was no going back to their old life now. Jake had made sure of that. Chapter 4. Moving her children into Dominic Blackwood's mansion felt like stepping into a different world, one where Alice didn't know the rules or her place in the hierarchy. The SUV convoy that transported them from her destroyed apartment included enough security personnel to guard a small country, and when they passed through the mansion's iron gates, Alice caught glimpses of more guards stationed throughout the manicured grounds. This is like a castle, Emma whispered, pressing her face to the window as they approached the imposing stone structure. Are we going to live here forever? Alex asked, his blue eyes wide with wonder and uncertainty. Alice didn't have an answer. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry had been scraping together rent money. Now she was taking refuge in a billionaire's mansion while her werewolf ex-husband held 4 children hostage. The surreal nature of it all made her feel like she was living in someone else's life. Just until we get your brother and sister back, she told the twins, though she had no idea how long that might take. Zoe remained unusually quiet during the short journey, her dark eyes fixed on Dominic. Alice had noticed her oldest daughter watching him with an intensity that made her uncomfortable, as if Zoe could see things about him that Alice couldn't. The mansion's interior was even more overwhelming than Alice remembered from their earlier visit. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors, and everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of wealth so vast it was almost incomprehensible. Her children's second-hand clothes and worn sneakers looked painfully out of place against such luxury. "Mrs. Rodriguez will show you to your rooms," Dominic said, gesturing to a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "If you need anything at all, we need our children back," Alice interrupted, exhaustion making her voice sharper than intended. "And we'll get them back." Dominic's gray eyes held steady on hers. "But first, you and your family need rest. It's been a long night." Mrs. Rodriguez led them up a sweeping staircase to the second floor, where she opened the door to a suite that was larger than Alice's entire apartment. 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting area, each with its own bathroom featuring marble fixtures and towels thicker than any Alice had ever owned. "This is too much," Alice said quietly. "Nonsense," Mrs. Rodriguez replied with a warm smile. "Mr. Blackwood wants you to be comfortable. I've laid out some clothes for you and the children, just basics until we can arrange proper shopping." Alice looked at the clothes spread across the bed, designer jeans in her exact size, soft sweaters, underwear still in packages. "How did you know our sizes?" "Mr. Blackwood is very thorough," Mrs. Rodriguez said diplomatically. "Dinner will be served at 7 if you'd like to join the family, or I can bring trays up here if you prefer privacy." "Family?" Alice asked. "The pack," Mrs. Rodriguez clarified, then seemed to realize Alice might not understand. "Those who live here permanently. It's usually about 12 people, though more come and go for business." After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Alice sank onto the sitting room's plush sofa and tried to process everything. 12 people lived here permanently. Dominic had mentioned pack members treating him with reverence and fear. She was beginning to understand that she'd stumbled into something much larger and more complex than a simple custody dispute. "Mommy," Zoe said, settling beside her, "the house smells like safety." "What do you mean?" "Like when you used to read to us before bedtime. Like being protected." Zoe frowned. "But also like something wild. Like the forest dreams, but not scary." Alex and Emma were exploring the bedrooms, their excited voices echoing through the suite. Despite everything they'd been through, they were still young enough to be thrilled by the adventure of staying somewhere so grand. "Zoe, about your dreams," Alice began carefully. "You said you could sometimes talk to the other children?" "Sometimes. It's harder when I'm awake." Zoe leaned against Alice's shoulder. "But I can feel them. They're scared but trying to be brave. The bad man keeps telling them stories about their real families not wanting them." Alice's heart clenched. "What kind of stories?" "He tells Alex and Emma that you abandoned them on purpose. And he tells the other twins that their daddy never looked for them." Zoe's voice grew smaller. "They're starting to believe him." The cruelty of Jake's psychological manipulation made Alice's hands clench into fists. She felt a strange heat building in her chest, along with an almost overwhelming urge to find Jake and make him pay for hurting children. "Mommy?" Zoe was staring at her with wide eyes. "Your eyes look different." Alice rushed to the bathroom mirror and gasped. Her brown eyes had flecks of gold around the pupils, and as she watched, they seemed to glow briefly before returning to normal. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. A knock at the door interrupted her panic. Dominic entered when she called out, and immediately his nostrils flared slightly. "Alice, we need to talk." His voice carried an urgency that made her stomach clench. "Kids, why don't you explore the rooms for a few minutes?" Alice suggested, though Zoe remained planted on the sofa, watching everything with those 2 observant eyes. "I'm staying," Zoe announced. "I need to understand what's happening to our family." Dominic studied the 8-year-old for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. You're old enough to hear this." He turned to Alice. "How are you feeling? Any changes in your senses, your strength, unusual urges?" "Why?" Alice wrapped her arms around herself. "What's wrong with me?" "Nothing's wrong. something's awakening. Dominic moved closer, and Alice caught that wild scent that made her pulse quicken. Alice, I need you to meet someone. Dr. Elena Vasquez, our pack physician. Before Alice could protest, a woman appeared in the doorway, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked black hair and intelligent dark eyes. She carried herself with the same predatory grace as Dominic and Marcus. You must be Alice, Dr. Vasquez said warmly. I'd like to examine you, if you don't mind. Nothing invasive, just checking some basic responses. What kind of responses? Reflexes, sensory acuity, hormone levels. Dr. Vasquez set down a small medical bag. Changes in werewolves happen gradually usually, but exposure to a true alpha can accelerate the process dramatically. Alice found herself submitting to the examination, letting Dr. Vasquez check her pulse, look into her eyes with a small flashlight, test her reflexes with a rubber hammer. The entire time, she was hyper-aware of Dominic's presence across the room, of his scent, of the way his gray eyes tracked her every movement. Fascinating, Dr. Vasquez murmured, making notes on a tablet. Alice, have you ever been told anything about your family history? Specifically your grandmother's background? My grandmother? Alice frowned. She died when I was young. My mother always said she was eccentric, preferred living alone in the mountains. Did she ever mention why your grandmother left her hometown? Or why she never talked about her past? No, but... Alice searched her memory. There were always stories about her being able to predict weather, about animals following her around. My mother said she had a way with wild creatures. Dr. Vasquez exchanged a meaningful look with Dominic. Alice, I believe your grandmother was a werewolf who chose to leave pack life behind. It's rare, but it happens sometimes. The genes can lie dormant for generations. That's impossible. Your blood work suggests otherwise. Dr. Vasquez showed her the tablet, though the medical data meant nothing to Alice. You're not fully human, Alice. You never were. Being around Dominic, a true alpha, has awakened genes that have been sleeping in your DNA. Alice felt the room spin around her. You're saying I'm turning into a werewolf? You're becoming what you always were, Dominic said gently. The process was probably started by your exposure to Jake over the years, but being around your true mate has accelerated it. True mate? Alice's voice came out as a whisper. The reason Jake could never fully bond with you, Dr. Vasquez explained. The reason he became increasingly unstable and possessive. You weren't meant for him, you were meant for Dominic. Before Alice could process this revelation, that strange heat flared in her chest again. The room seemed to brighten, and she could suddenly hear conversations happening floors below, could smell individual scents from dozens of different people throughout the house. It's happening, Dr. Vasquez said urgently. What's happening? Alice gasped, doubling over as pain shot through her body. Your first partial shift, Dominic moved toward her. Alice, I need you to try to stay calm, Mommy. Alex and Emma came running from the bedroom, drawn by her distress. They stopped short when they saw her, their blue eyes going wide with fear. Alice looked down at her hands and screamed. Her fingernails had elongated into claws, and dark fur was sprouting along her forearms. She could feel her face changing, her jaw extending, her teeth sharpening. Stay back, she gasped to her children, but they were already backing away in terror. Mommy's turning into a monster, Emma whimpered. The words hit Alice like a physical blow. She tried to stand, to reach for her children, but the pain doubled her over again. She was losing control, losing herself, and her babies were watching it happen. Zoe, take Alex and Emma into the bedroom, Dominic ordered sharply. But instead of obeying, Zoe moved closer to Alice. It's okay, she said calmly. Mommy's not a monster. She's just becoming who she really is. As if Zoe's acceptance was permission, Alex and Emma suddenly gasped in unison. Alice watched in shock as her 5-year-old twins began their own transformation, not the painful, chaotic shift Alice was experiencing, but something gentle and natural. Alex's bright blue eyes flashed gold, and his canine teeth elongated slightly. Emma's hearing clearly sharpened as she tilted her head toward sounds Alice couldn't detect. Both children stood straighter, moving with new grace and confidence. "We can feel you," Alex said wonderingly, looking at Alice. "In our minds." "Like we feel each other," Emma added, "but stronger." The connection hit Alice like a warm wave. She could sense her children's emotions, their thoughts, their love for her despite their fear. The pack bond, she was feeling the pack bond forming between them. "That's right," Zoe said, moving to stand between Alice and the twins. "We're all connected now. We're pack." Slowly, Alice's transformation began to reverse. The claws retracted, the fur disappeared, her face returned to normal. But the heightened senses remained, along with something new, an overwhelming awareness of Dominic standing across the room, watching her with an intensity that made her skin burn. "The mate bond," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "It's fully active now." Alice looked at Dominic and felt something click into place deep in her chest. The attraction she'd been fighting, the electric sensation when they touched, the way her body responded to his presence, it all made sense now. "You're my mate," she whispered. "And you're mine." Dominic's voice was rough with emotion. "I've been waiting my whole life for you, Alice. I just didn't know it until now." Alex and Emma moved closer, no longer afraid. They could sense the connection between their mother and Dominic, could feel the rightness of it through their new pack awareness. "Does this mean he's going to be our new daddy?" Emma asked. "If your mother will have me," Dominic said, his gray eyes never leaving Alice's face. "If she'll accept what we are, what we can be together." Alice looked around the room, at her children who were no longer fully human, at the doctor who spoke of werewolf genetics like discussing the weather, at the man whose very presence made her feel complete in ways she'd never experienced. "I don't know how to be a werewolf," she said finally. "You'll learn," Dominic replied. "We'll all learn together. And in the meantime," Zoe said with 8-year-old practicality, "we still need to save Alex and Emma's other siblings." Reality crashed back over Alice. Jake still had 4 children. They still had less than 48 hours. And now she was dealing with supernatural abilities she didn't understand. But as she looked at Dominic, felt the strength of their mate bond settling into place, Alice realized something had fundamentally changed. She wasn't the same overwhelmed single mother who'd texted the wrong number. She was becoming something stronger, something capable of fighting for her family. "Then we better get started," she said, surprised by the authority in her own voice. "Those children have been away from their real family long enough." Dominic smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Alice felt like they might actually win. Chapter 5. Alice woke before dawn to the sound of voices in the courtyard below. Through her bedroom window, she could see figures moving in the pre-dawn darkness, pack members running training drills with military precision. Her enhanced hearing picked up Dominic's voice giving quiet commands, and despite everything that had happened, the sound of it made something warm settle in her chest. The mate bond. Even thinking about it made her feel off balance. She'd managed maybe 3 hours of sleep, her mind churning over everything that had changed in the past day. She wasn't human. Her children weren't human. The man she'd loved and married had been lying to her for years about his very species. And now she was mated to a billionaire werewolf who commanded loyalty like a military general. "Mommy?" Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "I can hear people talking downstairs, but they're too far away for me to hear them." Alice's heart clenched. Her 5-year-old daughter was dealing with enhanced senses she didn't understand. "Come here, baby." Emma climbed into bed beside her, and Alice was startled by how easy it was to sense her daughter's emotions through their new pack connection. Confusion, excitement, and an underlying worry about her missing siblings. "Are we really different now?" Emma asked. "We're still the same people," Alice said carefully. "We just have some new abilities." "Like Daddy?" Alice's stomach tightened. "Your father lied to us about what he was, Emma. For a very long time. But Mr. Dominic doesn't lie." Emma said this with the certainty only children possessed. "I can feel it when people lie now. It tastes wrong. Before Alice could ask what that meant, Alex appeared in the doorway, followed by Zoe. All three children looked more alert than usual despite the early hour. There are a lot of people downstairs, Alex reported. And they smell nervous. Zoe had another dream, Emma added. About our other brother and sister. Alice sat up straighter. What kind of dream? Zoe climbed onto the bed, her dark eyes serious. They're okay, but they're scared. The bad man keeps telling them stories about how their real daddy didn't want them. He's trying to make them forget their real family. Did you learn anything about where they are? Somewhere cold. With lots of concrete and metal. Zoe frowned. And water nearby. Like a big lake or river. Alice filed that information away. It wasn't much, but it was something. Zoe, did you put anything in your backpack yesterday? Before we left the apartment? Just my journal and some drawings. Zoe's eyes widened. Why? Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart. I just want to look at your things. 20 minutes later, Alice was going through Zoe's backpack while her children got dressed in the expensive clothes Mrs. Rodriguez had provided. Hidden beneath Zoe's school notebooks, Alice found a folded piece of paper she didn't recognize, expensive stationery with a letterhead that made her blood run cold. Fenris Industries. Jake's real surname. He'd started his own company using his birth name. Alice unfolded the letter with shaking hands. My dear Zoe, by the time you read this, you'll understand that everything your mother told you about your family was a lie. I am your father's true alpha, and it's time for our pack to be reunited properly. The children you've been dreaming about belong with us, not with the man who abandoned them. Dominic Blackwood cared so little for his twins that he let them be taken without a fight. Now he's trying to steal my family too. You have a gift, little wolf. You can speak to others in dreams, guide them, help them understand the truth. Use that gift to help your siblings understand that their real family is waiting for them. When the time comes, bring your mother and brother and sister to me willingly. Don't let the false alpha convince you that he cares about any of you. You are mine, just as your mother has always been mine. Your true alpha, Jacob Fenris. Alice's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the paper. Jake had been communicating with Zoe directly, trying to manipulate her 8-year-old daughter into believing his lies. A knock at the door made her jump. Dominic entered, already dressed in dark tactical gear that made him look dangerous and competent. The Pack Council is convening in an hour, he said. We need to discuss strategy for retrieving the children. Alice held out the letter. You need to see this first. Dominic's expression grew darker with every line he read. When he finished, his gray eyes held flecks of gold. He's been grooming her. Trying to turn your daughter into his accomplice. He's been poisoning all of them, Alice said. Zoe, come here. Her daughter approached cautiously, clearly sensing the tension. Sweetheart, did the man who looks like your father ever give you this letter? Alice showed her the paper. Zoe nodded reluctantly. He said not to tell you. He said you wouldn't understand because you were still under a spell. What spell? Dominic asked gently. He said the false alpha was making you forget who you really belonged to. Zoe looked between Alice and Dominic. But that doesn't feel right. When I'm near Mr. Dominic, everything feels more real, not less real. Alice felt a surge of pride in her daughter's instincts, followed immediately by rage that Jake had tried to manipulate them. The anger triggered something in her chest, that same heat she'd experienced during her partial transformation. Alice, Dominic said sharply. Your scent just changed. She could feel it too, her senses sharpening, her strength increasing. But this time, instead of fear, she felt power. Good, she said. I'm tired of being afraid. An hour later, Alice found herself in a room she hadn't seen before, a formal conference room with a long oak table surrounded by high-backed chairs. 12 people sat around the table, all of them radiating the same predatory energy she'd learned to associate with werewolves. These were the Pack Council members, and they were not happy. This is unprecedented, said a woman with steel-gray hair and cold blue eyes. An unstable new werewolf with untrained children, and you want us to risk pack resources to rescue the offspring of a rogue? Councilwoman Patricia, Dominic said evenly, those children are innocent victims of Jake's manipulations. Are they? Patricia's gaze fixed on Alice. Or are they part of his plan? How convenient that his human mate suddenly develops werewolf abilities just when he needs leverage against you. Alice felt her temper flare. I didn't ask for any of this. Didn't you? Another council member, a man with a scarred face, leaned forward. You lived with a rogue for years. You bore his children. And now you expect us to believe you had no idea what he was? That's enough. Dominic's voice carried alpha authority that made everyone at the table stiffen. Alice is my mate. She and her children are under my protection. Your mate? Patricia's laugh was bitter. Dominic, you've known this woman for less than 48 hours. You can't possibly be certain. I am certain. Dominic's eyes flashed gold. The mate bond is absolute. The mate bond can be fabricated, said a third council member Alice hadn't been introduced to. Especially by someone with Jake's knowledge of pack dynamics. Alice listened to them debate her authenticity like she wasn't sitting right there, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. These people, Dominic's own council, didn't trust her. Some of them seemed to think she was working with Jake. Perhaps, Patricia said carefully, Jake is right to remove the children from this situation. An unstable new werewolf, untrained cubs, a compromised alpha making emotional decisions. You think Jake is right? Alice stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You think a man who kidnaps children and lies to them about their families is right? I think, Patricia said coldly, that you're exactly what Jake said you'd be, emotional, unstable, and dangerous to this pack. The room went very quiet. Alice could feel Dominic's tension, could sense through their mate bond that he was fighting his own wolf to maintain control. What did Jake tell you? Alice asked, her voice deadly quiet. Patricia had the grace to look uncomfortable. We may have received communications. You've been talking to him. Alice felt her world tilt again. Members of this council have been in contact with the man who kidnapped children. It was intelligence gathering, the scarred man protested. We needed to understand his motivations. His motivations? Alice's voice rose. His motivations are revenge and power. He told you I was unstable, didn't he? He told you I was dangerous. And you believed him. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door opened and a woman walked in who made Alice's blood turn to ice. Tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes, she moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd been born to privilege and power. Sorry I'm late, the woman said, taking a seat at the table like she belonged there. I was dealing with some urgent pack business. Victoria, Dominic said, and Alice heard something in his voice she couldn't identify. History. Complicated history. Hello, Dominic. Victoria's smile was perfect and cold. I hear you've been busy. Alice felt a strange sensation, possessiveness mixed with something primal and territorial. Through the mate bond, she could sense Dominic's discomfort and realized this woman meant something to him. Alice, Dominic said carefully, this is Victoria Sterling. She serves on the council and handles our external relations. Actually, Victoria said, her ice blue eyes fixing on Alice, I think there's been some confusion about my role here. I handle internal security as well. Which is why I've been investigating the situation with your guest. The way Victoria said guest made it clear she didn't consider Alice welcome. What kind of investigation? Alice asked. The kind that reveals interesting connections, Victoria replied smoothly. For instance, did you know that your phone number has been in contact with known rogue sympathizers for the past 6 months? Alice felt the blood drain from her face. That's impossible. Is it? Because my investigation shows regular communication between your phone and Jacob Fenris's known associates. Victoria pulled out a tablet and began reading. Messages about pack business, discussions of alpha behavior, references to territorial disputes. I never, Alice stopped, realization hitting her like a physical blow. Jake. Jake had my phone sometimes. He said he was checking messages for work. How convenient, Victoria said. An explanation for everything. It's the truth. The truth, Victoria said, standing gracefully, is that you've been Jake's inside source for months. The truth is that your so-called accidental text was carefully planned. The truth is that you're here to gather intelligence about our weaknesses so Jake can strike when we're most vulnerable. The room erupted in voices, some council members agreeing with Victoria, others arguing with her. But Alice only heard the blood rushing in her ears. You think I'm working with him, she said quietly. You think I'm here to betray you. I think, Victoria said with false sympathy, that Jake has been manipulating you for so long you don't even realize you're doing his bidding. Alice looked around the table at faces that reflected suspicion, doubt, and in some cases, outright hostility. Then she looked at Dominic and saw something that broke her heart, uncertainty. You're not sure either, she whispered. Alice, you're not sure if I'm telling the truth. Alice felt something cracking inside her chest. After everything that's happened, after the mate bond, you still wonder if I'm working with him. I know you're not working with him, Dominic said firmly. But the evidence can be fabricated, Alice finished. Just like the mate bond, right? Just like everything else about me. She turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped her. Alice, there's one more thing you should know. Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Dominic and I were engaged before all this happened. We were going to be mated within the month. So you'll understand why I'm particularly interested in ensuring this situation is resolved quickly and permanently. Alice felt the world stop. Engaged. Dominic had been engaged to this woman, and Alice had stumbled into their lives and disrupted everything. Is that true? She asked Dominic. His silence was answer enough. Alice walked out of the conference room with her head held high, but inside, her heart was breaking. Because she was beginning to understand that Jake's real plan was even more insidious than she'd realized. He hadn't just wanted to steal children, he'd wanted to destroy Dominic's pack from the inside. And he was succeeding. Chapter 6. Alice found Dominic in his study an hour after the disastrous council meeting, standing with his back to the door as he stared out the window at his pack members training in the courtyard. The tension radiating from him was so strong she could feel it through the mate bond, a churning mix of anger, frustration, and something that felt like guilt. We need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. Alice, about what Victoria said, were you engaged to her? The question came out sharper than she'd intended, but she needed to hear it from him. Dominic turned, and she saw the truth in his gray eyes before he spoke. Yes. The engagement was arranged by the Pack Council when we were children. It was expected. Expected. Alice felt something cold settle in her chest. And did you love her? I thought I did. Or I thought I was supposed to. Dominic moved closer, but Alice stepped back, not ready for his proximity. Alice, the engagement ended the moment I met you. The mate bond that half your council thinks is fake, Alice interrupted. The mate bond that Victoria clearly believes can be broken. It can't be broken. What we have is real, Alice. You have to know that. Before Alice could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was blocked, but she knew who it was before she answered. Jake. Hello, beautiful. I hear you've been having some trouble with pack politics. Jake's voice carried that familiar mockery that now made her skin crawl. Funny how quickly they turn on outsiders, isn't it? What do you want? To make you an offer. A reasonable one, considering how unwelcome you seem to be in your new home. Alice put the phone on speaker so Dominic could hear. His expression went dangerous, but he remained silent. I'm listening, Alice said. I'll return the Blackwood twins, unharmed, untouched, if you bring me Alex, Emma, and Zoe. Just the children, Alice. You can stay with your new Alpha and Playhouse. You want me to trade my children for his? I want you to choose your real family over the people who don't trust you. Jake's voice softened with false concern. Alice, they think you're working with me. They think you're a threat. How long before they decide you're too dangerous to keep around? Alice glanced at Dominic, seeing the muscle in his jaw tick. Because Jake wasn't entirely wrong, the pack council did see her as a threat. And if I refuse? Then all 4 children disappear forever. You'll never see any of them again. The warmth left Jake's voice. You have 6 hours to decide. I'll send coordinates. The line went dead. Alice stared at her phone, her mind racing. You're not seriously considering his offer, Dominic said. Aren't I? Alice turned to face him. Your pack council wants me gone. Half of them think I'm a spy. Your ex-fiancé is convinced I'm a threat to pack security. Maybe Jake's right, maybe everyone would be safer if I just took my children and left. That's not an option. Why? Because of the mate bond? Alice laughed bitterly. The mate bond that you questioned in front of your entire council? I never questioned it. You didn't defend it either. Alice felt tears building behind her eyes. Dominic, I can't be the reason you lose your children. If there's a chance to get them back, not by sacrificing your own children. Then what do you suggest? Because your pack doesn't want to help me, half of them think I'm working with Jake, and your ex-fiancé is actively trying to discredit me. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, and Alice could feel his internal struggle through their bond. Finally, he said, Victoria's been part of this pack since we were children. She's saved lives, protected pack interests, served on the council for years. I can't just what? Believe that someone you've known your whole life could betray you? Alice felt her temper flare. Join the club, Dominic. I lived with Jake for 8 years, bore his children, trusted him with my life. And it was all a lie. Before Dominic could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. Mrs. Rodriguez peered in, looking worried. I'm sorry to disturb you, but the children are asking for you, Alice. They seem agitated. Alice found her 3 children in the sitting room of their suite, huddled together on the sofa. All 3 looked up when she entered, and she was struck by how similar their expressions were, determined and slightly guilty. What's going on? She asked. We heard, Zoe said simply. Heard what? The phone call. We were coming to find you when we heard that man talking. Alex's blue eyes were fierce. He wants to trade us for our other brother and sister. And you're thinking about saying yes, Emma added. We can feel it through the pack bond. Alice sat down across from them, struck by how adult they seemed despite their young ages. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, Zoe interrupted. We all go together, or nobody goes. Absolutely not. I'm not putting you in danger. We're already in danger, Alex pointed out with 5-year-old logic. And our other siblings are scared. I can feel them, Emma said quietly. Through the dreams. They think nobody's coming for them. Alice felt her heart break. Sweetheart, it's too dangerous. We're stronger together, Zoe said firmly. The 4 of us kids, I mean. When we're all together, our abilities work better. I can feel it in the dreams. What do you mean? Zoe exchanged glances with Alex and Emma, and Alice caught a flicker of communication between them that bypassed words entirely. Show her, Alex whispered. Zoe closed her eyes and went very still. A moment later, Alex and Emma did the same. Alice watched in fascination as her children's breathing synchronized, as their heartbeats seemed to match through the pack bond. Then Zoe began to speak, but her voice sounded different, older, more frightened. Mommy? Are you there? The bad man says you don't want us anymore, but we don't believe him. We can feel our real daddy looking for us, but we're scared. There's another lady here who smells like lies and anger. She keeps talking to the bad man about pack business. Alice's blood turned to ice. Zoe? Is that you? I'm talking for Bobby, Zoe said in that strange, older voice. He's one of the twins the bad man took. He says the lying lady has been coming here for a long time. She helped plan everything. What lady? Alice asked urgently. Pretty lady with yellow hair and cold eyes, Alex said, his voice also different now. She talks to the bad man about the Alpha's movements, about when he'll be away from the house. Emma opened her eyes, but they weren't quite her own anymore. She's been feeding information to him for years. She wanted the twins gone so she could have their daddy all to herself. Alice felt the world tilt around her. Victoria. They were describing Victoria. Kids, come back now, she said urgently. Stop the connection. All three children blinked and returned to themselves, looking drained but alert. Did we do good? Emma asked. You did amazing, Alice said, pulling them into a fierce hug. But you're never to do that again without adult supervision. It's too dangerous. But now you know the truth about the lying lady, Zoe pointed out. Alice's mind was racing. Victoria had been feeding Jake information for years. She'd helped orchestrate the kidnapping of Dominic's children. And now she was trying to convince the Pack Council that Alice was the threat. Stay here, Alice told her children. Don't leave this room for any reason. She found Dominic still in his study, but he was no longer alone. Victoria stood near his desk, her platinum hair perfect despite the late hour, her ice blue eyes concerned and sympathetic. I've been thinking about what happened in the council meeting, Victoria was saying. Perhaps I was too harsh. The situation is stressful for everyone. Alice is not working with Jake, Dominic said firmly. Of course not, Victoria agreed smoothly. I can see how much she cares about you. Which is why I think she'd want what's best for the pack, even if it means making difficult choices. Alice stepped into the room, and Victoria's expression flickered for just a moment, annoyance quickly masked by false warmth. Alice. I was just telling Dominic that perhaps we should reconsider Jake's offer. If there's a chance to get his children back safely, by sacrificing mine? Alice's voice was deadly quiet. By being practical, Victoria replied. Jake has made it clear he'll disappear with all 4 children if his terms aren't met. At least this way, 2 children are saved. How long have you been feeding Jake information about pack security? Alice asked. The room went completely silent. Victoria's perfect composure slipped for just an instant, but it was enough. I beg your pardon? Victoria said, but Alice caught the slight tremor in her voice. My children can dream walk. They've been in contact with Dominic's twins. Alice stepped closer, feeling power humming under her skin. The children described a pretty lady with yellow hair who's been visiting Jake for years, giving him information about Dominic's movements. That's ridiculous, Victoria said, but her scent had changed. Alice could smell fear and guilt. Is it? Because it would explain how Jake knew exactly when to take the children. It would explain how he knew about pack security protocols. It would explain how he knew I would accidentally text Dominic's number. Alice, Dominic said quietly, but she could feel his growing realization through the mate bond. She orchestrated everything, Alice continued, her voice gaining strength. The kidnapping, the timing, even my arrival here. She wanted Dominic's children gone so she could have him to herself. You're being paranoid, Victoria said, but she was backing toward the door. Am I? Alice pulled out her phone and showed them the blocked call log. Jake called me on a blocked number, but I can trace the call origin through pack resources. Want to bet it came from a phone registered to someone in this house? Victoria's ice blue eyes went wide, then narrow with hatred. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then prove it, Alice challenged. Let Dominic verify your phone records. Let the pack technicians trace that call. For a moment, Victoria looked like she might brazen it out. Then something shifted in her expression, a calculation that Alice didn't like. You know what? Victoria said, her voice taking on a different quality. You're right. I did help Jake. Dominic went very still. Victoria, I've been in love with you since we were children, Dominic. We were supposed to be mated, supposed to lead this pack together. And then Isabel came along with her tragic story and her helpless children, and you fell for it completely. Alice felt a chill run down her spine. Isabel, the mother of Dominic's twins. When she died in childbirth, I thought finally you'd see that I was the one who'd been there all along. But no, you just mourned her more. Those children became more important to you than I ever was. So you had them kidnapped. Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. I had them relocated, Victoria corrected. Somewhere safe, where they could grow up without the pressure of pack politics. Jake was supposed to find them good families, far from here. But he didn't, Alice realized. He kept them for himself. Jake has his own agenda, Victoria said dismissively. But it worked out. You were finally starting to move on, finally considering our engagement again. And then she showed up. Victoria's gaze fixed on Alice with pure hatred. Another tragic single mother with children who need protecting. Another woman for you to play hero for. Alice felt something building in Dominic, rage so pure and powerful it was like standing next to a volcano about to erupt. Through the mate bond, she could feel his wolf fighting for control. You betrayed my children, Dominic said, his voice deepening with each word. You betrayed me. You betrayed the pack. I did it for us. Victoria cried. For the pack we were supposed to lead together. That's when Dominic lost control. Alice had never seen a full alpha transformation before. Dominic's human form seemed to expand and shift, his features becoming more predatory, his gray eyes blazing gold. Power radiated from him in waves that made the windows rattle and the lights flicker. Victoria stumbled backward, her own wolf instincts recognizing the threat of an enraged alpha. Dominic, please, Alice didn't think. She stepped between them, placing her hands on Dominic's chest and opening herself completely to their mate bond. Dominic, she said quietly. I need you to come back to me. The connection hit both of them like a tidal wave. Alice felt Dominic's rage, his betrayal, his love for his missing children and his fury at Victoria's deception. But underneath it all, she felt his love for her, pure, overwhelming, and absolutely certain. In return, Dominic felt her fear, her determination to protect all the children, her growing love for him despite everything that had happened. He felt her acceptance of what they were, what they could be together. Slowly, his transformation began to reverse. His features softened back to human, though his eyes remained gold-flecked. Alice, he whispered, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything Alice had never known she wanted, gentle and fierce, claiming and surrendering, human and wildly supernatural all at once. Through their bond, she felt the final pieces of her transformation clicking into place. She was fully werewolf now, fully mated, fully his. When they broke apart, Victoria was gone. But Alice could hear pack members moving through the house, could smell Marcus and other wolves tracking Victoria's scent. She won't get far, Dominic said against Alice's forehead. The pack will find her. And Jake? Now we know the truth. Now we can plan properly. Dominic's arms tightened around her. Alice, I'm sorry. I should have seen, you trusted someone you'd known your whole life, Alice said. That's not something to apologize for. I almost lost you because of it. But you didn't. Alice looked up at him, seeing her future in his gold-flecked eyes. And now we're going to get our children back. Our children. Not his children and her children, but theirs. As if summoned by the thought, Zoe appeared in the doorway, followed by Alex and Emma. Is the lying lady gone? Emma asked. Yes, Dominic said, kneeling to their level. She's gone. Good, Alex said firmly. Now we can save our other brother and sister. Alice felt her heart swell as she watched Dominic with her children, their children. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family. A pack. And Jake Morrison was about to learn exactly how dangerous a united pack could be. Chapter 7 The abandoned werewolf sanctuary sat like a wound in the mountainside, its stone walls crumbling and windows dark against the pre-dawn sky. Alice crouched behind a fallen log with Dominic and his strike team, studying the compound through night vision scopes. Somewhere inside those walls were 4 children who'd been through hell, and every maternal instinct she possessed screamed at her to charge in and rescue them. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 heat signatures, Marcus reported quietly, his green eyes reflecting the faint starlight. 4 small ones in the central building, the rest scattered throughout the compound. Jake brought reinforcements, Dominic murmured, his voice carrying the controlled authority Alice had learned to associate with his alpha mode. This was planned. Of course it was planned, said a voice from behind them. Alice spun around to find her 3 children emerging from the tree line, moving with the silent grace their werewolf heritage was teaching them. Zoe led the way, her dark eyes serious and determined, while Alex and Emma flanked her like tiny bodyguards. "What are you doing here?" Alice hissed. "I told you to stay at the house with Mrs. Rodriguez." "We can't help from there," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "And Bobby and Elizabeth need us." "Bobby and Elizabeth?" Dominic asked. "That's what the kidnapped twins are called," Emma explained. "They're real names. The bad man makes them use different names, but those are who they really are." "How do you know that?" Alice demanded. Alex touched his temple. "Dream connection. It's stronger when we're close to them. They're scared and confused, but they're fighting not to believe the bad man's lies. They think their real daddy abandoned them," Emma added sadly. "The bad man keeps showing them fake evidence that nobody's looking for them." Alice felt her heart break for Dominic, seeing the pain that flashed across his face. Through their mate bond, she could feel his guilt and desperate love for the children he'd been searching for. "All the more reason for you 3 to stay safe," Alice said firmly. "This is too dangerous." "No, it's not," Zoe argued with 8-year-old stubbornness. "We're the only ones who can convince Bobby and Elizabeth that help really came. They won't trust adults right now. The bad man has been hurting them when they try to resist." Dominic went very still. "Hurting them how?" Zoe exchanged glances with her siblings, and Alice caught that wordless communication again. "He's been trying to force their abilities to come out stronger. Using pain and fear to trigger transformations." "That's barbaric," Marcus snarled. "Forced manifestation can destroy a child's mind." "Which is why we need to get them out now," Alex said. "Before he breaks them completely." Alice looked at her 3 children, her babies who were talking about rescue missions and forced transformations like they understood things no child should understand. But their supernatural heritage was showing them things her human experience couldn't. "It's too dangerous," she said again, but with less conviction. "Mommy," Emma said gently, "sometimes being family means being brave together." Before Alice could argue further, her enhanced hearing caught something that made her blood freeze, the sound of a child crying from inside the compound. Not just any crying, but the kind of broken sobbing that spoke of trauma and desperation. "Elizabeth," Zoe whispered. "She's having another nightmare about the day they were taken." Through the mate bond, Alice felt Dominic's control waver. His alpha instincts were demanding he charge into that building and tear apart anyone who'd hurt his children. "We go together," Alice said suddenly, surprising herself. "But you 3 stay behind us and follow orders exactly. No heroics, no matter what happens." "Deal," all 3 children said in unison. Marcus looked skeptical. "Alpha, bringing untrained cubs into a combat situation. They're not untrained," Dominic said quietly. "They're connecting to my children in ways we can't. If that connection is what saves Bobby and Elizabeth, then we use every advantage we have." 20 minutes later, Alice found herself crawling through a drainage pipe that led under the sanctuary's foundation, following Marcus while Dominic and the strike team created a distraction at the main entrance. Her children moved behind her with surprising stealth, their werewolf instincts guiding them through the darkness. The pipe opened into a basement storage room filled with moldy furniture and broken equipment. Alice helped her children through the opening, then froze as voices carried from somewhere above. "Should have been stronger by now. The bloodline is pure, but they're resisting the forced manifestation." Jake's voice, but with an edge Alice had never heard before, clinical detachment that made her skin crawl. Perhaps different motivation is needed, said another voice, one Alice didn't recognize. Children respond well to threat against their loved ones. They don't have any loved ones, Jake replied. I've made sure they understand their father abandoned them. Alice felt rage building in her chest, along with that familiar heat that signaled her wolf wanting to surface. Through their psychic connection, she felt her children responding to her emotions, their own abilities strengthening in response to her maternal fury. This way, Zoe whispered, pointing toward a staircase. They're up there, in the big room at the end of the hall. Alice followed her daughter's lead, marveling at how Zoe seemed to navigate the building like she'd been there before. The dream connection was stronger than Alice had realized. Zoe was literally seeing through the other children's eyes. They reached the first-floor hallway just as gunfire erupted from the front of the building. Dominic and his team had begun their assault. Move, Alice whispered, leading her children toward the room Zoe had indicated. The door was reinforced steel with multiple locks, but Alex stepped forward and placed his small hands against the metal. Alice watched in amazement as her 5-year-old son's eyes flashed gold, and the locks began to turn with soft clicking sounds. How did you? Metal speaks to me sometimes, Alex said simply. When I'm scared enough. The door swung open to reveal a scene that made Alice's heart stop. 2 children sat huddled in the corner of what had clearly been a laboratory, a boy and girl who looked exactly like Alex and Emma but older and far too thin. Their clothes were dirty, their hair unkempt, and their eyes held a wariness that no child should possess. But it was the equipment around the room that made Alice's blood boil, restraint chairs, electrical devices, and syringes filled with substances she didn't want to identify. Bobby? Elizabeth? Zoe stepped forward slowly, her voice gentle. We're here to take you home. The boy, Bobby, pulled his sister closer. You're not real. The bad man makes us see things that aren't real. We are real, Emma said, moving to stand beside Zoe. Look, I'm Emma. That's Alex. We're your new brother and sister. We don't have new family, Elizabeth whispered. Our daddy didn't want us anymore. Alice felt tears threaten as she watched her children approach Dominic's twins with infinite patience and love. That's not true, Alex said firmly. Your daddy has been looking for you every single day. He never stopped looking. The bad man showed us pictures, Bobby said. Pictures of our daddy with a new family. He said we were replaced. Those pictures were lies, Zoe said gently. Your daddy is here right now, fighting to get you back. And he brought our mommy to help because we're all family now. Alice stepped into the light, and both kidnapped children went very still. Hello, Bobby. Hello, Elizabeth, she said softly. Your father has told me so much about you. He loves you very much. You're the new mommy, Elizabeth whispered. The one who's going to take our place. No, sweetheart. I'm the mommy who's going to help take care of all of you together. Alice knelt down to their level. No one is being replaced. Families grow, they don't shrink. Before either child could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jake's voice carried clearly. Well, well. The rescue party has arrived. Jake appeared in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. 3 other men flanked him, werewolves Alice didn't recognize, all carrying weapons and wearing tactical gear. Alice, you actually brought the cubs. How perfectly convenient. Jake's smile was cold and sharp. Now I have all 4 bloodlines in one place. Bloodlines? Alice stood slowly, positioning herself between Jake and the children. You didn't know? Jake laughed. Your children and Dominic's children represent the 4 most powerful werewolf bloodlines in North America. Combined, they could create a pack strong enough to rule all the territories. That's what this is about? Power? Everything is about power, Alice. You just never understood that. Jake stepped into the room, and Alice caught a scent that made her wolf recoil. Something wrong, tainted. But my new partners do understand. The Shadow Moon Pack has been very generous in funding this operation. Shadow Moon? Alice had heard Dominic mention that name, a rival pack that had been trying to expand into their territory for years. This was never about the children, she realized. This was about starting a war. The children were always the point, Jake corrected. But yes, war is coming. And when Dominic's pack falls, I'll have the strongest cubs in the continent to build my new empire. One of Jake's companions, a scarred man with yellow eyes, stepped forward. Enough talking. Take the cubs and eliminate the woman. Wait, said a familiar voice from the hallway. There's been a change of plans. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her platinum hair disheveled and her ice blue eyes wild. I've been working undercover for months, gathering intelligence on the Shadow Moon Pack. Jake, you're under arrest by pack law. Alice's enhanced senses immediately detected the lie. Victoria's scent was wrong, fear mixed with desperation and something that smelled like betrayal. Victoria's lying, Alice said quickly. I can smell it. Of course she's lying, Jake laughed. Victoria's been my inside source for 2 years. She's the one who suggested targeting the children in the first place. That's not true. Victoria protested, but Alice could hear the panic in her voice. The scarred man raised his weapon, pointing it at Alice. Enough. Kill the woman and take the children. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Victoria lunged forward, not toward Jake or his men, but toward Alice, a silver knife gleaming in her hand. If I can't have him, no one can. Victoria screamed. Alice's werewolf instincts kicked in, and she dodged the knife thrust while simultaneously pushing all 4 children behind her. But Victoria was faster than Alice had expected, and the blade sliced across Alice's shoulder, sending silver-induced fire through her system. In the chaos, Jake grabbed Elizabeth and hauled her toward a window that Alice hadn't noticed, an escape route he'd prepared in advance. Choose, Jake called to Alice as he balanced on the window ledge with the terrified little girl. Come after me and save one child, or stay here and try to save everyone else when my friends start shooting. Alice looked around the room, at her 3 children and Bobby huddled behind overturned furniture, at Victoria preparing for another attack, at Jake's armed companions raising their weapons. Silver bullets, she realized. Designed to kill werewolves. The choice should have been impossible. But as Alice looked at her children's faces, Zoe, Alex, Emma, and Bobby, she knew what she had to do. Zoe, take the others and get out through the drainage pipe, Alice ordered. Bobby, your father is fighting at the front of the building. Find him. What about you? Zoe asked. I'm going to make sure everyone gets out safely. Alice turned to face Victoria and Jake's men. Including her. Alice, don't be stupid, Jake called from the window. I have Elizabeth. She's worth more than Victoria's worthless life. No child is worth more than another person's life, Alice said firmly. And that includes Victoria. Alice launched herself not at Jake, but at the scarred gunman who was taking aim at her children. Her partially shifted claws found his throat before he could fire, and she felt his weapon discharge harmlessly into the ceiling. Behind her, she heard Victoria's shocked gasp. You saved me? Get the children out, Alice snarled, grappling with the second gunman. Now. Through the mate bond, she felt Dominic's presence getting closer. He'd felt her distress and was fighting his way toward them. But Jake was already gone, taking Elizabeth with him into the night. Alice had chosen to save the people in front of her rather than pursue the one who'd escaped. She could only hope it had been the right choice. As sirens wailed in the distance and Dominic's voice echoed through the building calling her name, Alice realized she'd just passed some kind of test, not just of her courage, but of her worthiness to be Luna of the pack. She'd chosen mercy over vengeance, protection over pursuit, the many over the few. Now she had to live with the consequences. Chapter 8. 3 months after the confrontation at the sanctuary, Alice stood in the kitchen of what had once been her cramped apartment, watching Mrs. Rodriguez direct a team of contractors installing reinforced windows and security systems. The space looked nothing like the home where she'd struggled to raise 3 children on cereal dinners and second-hand clothes. Now it gleamed with new appliances, fresh paint, and the kind of upgrades that spoke of serious money and careful planning. The motion sensors are linked directly to pack security, Mrs. Rodriguez explained, checking items off a tablet. And the panic room behind the bedroom closet can hold up to 8 people for 72 hours. A panic room seems excessive for a safe house, Alice said, though she'd learned not to question Dominic's security measures too much. Not when it's housing werewolf families fleeing from dangerous situations, Mrs. Rodriguez replied. This week we have the Fernandez family, mother and 2 cubs escaping an abusive pack leader. Next week, the Doro twins whose parents were killed by rogue hunters. Alice nodded, understanding now why the apartment renovation had been necessary. As Luna of the Blackwood Pack, she discovered that her role extended far beyond being Dominic's mate. She was becoming a bridge between the werewolf world and human society, helping displaced families navigate both systems while keeping their supernatural nature secret. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dominic, council meeting running late. Start dinner without me. Tell the kids I'll make it up to them. Alice smiled, typing back, they're too busy with their new project to notice. Bobby has them all convinced they can build a treehouse that spans 3 trees. The response was immediate, Dear God. Please tell me Zoe is supervising. Of course. She's the only one with engineering sense. I'll be home soon. Love you. Love you too. Alice pocketed her phone, still marveling at how natural those words had become. 3 months ago, love had been a concept tainted by Jake's lies and manipulation. Now it was as essential as breathing. She drove back to the mansion through streets that no longer felt foreign. The sprawling estate had become home in a way her apartment never quite had, not because of the luxury, but because of the family that filled it. Pack members came and went at all hours, but the core group had become her extended family. Marcus, Dr. Vasquez, Mrs. Rodriguez, and a dozen others who'd accepted her not just as Dominic's mate, but as their Luna. The sound of children's laughter drew her to the back garden, where she found all 5 kids engaged in what appeared to be an elaborate construction project. Zoe stood on a ladder, directing Alex and Emma as they passed up boards and rope. Bobby and Elizabeth worked on the ground level, their faces bright with the kind of joy Alice had feared they might never recover. That support beam won't hold, Zoe was saying with 8-year-old authority. We need to redistribute the weight across multiple anchor points. Where did she learn engineering? Bobby asked Alex. YouTube, Alex replied cheerfully. And she reads Daddy's business magazines. Alice's heart warmed at how naturally the children had adapted to calling Dominic Daddy. For Bobby and Elizabeth, it had been a gradual healing process, weeks of therapy with Dr. Vasquez, careful rebuilding of trust, and the patient love of their new siblings. The day Bobby had first called Dominic Dad instead of Sir, there hadn't been a dry eye in the house. How's the construction going? Alice called out. Great. Elizabeth called back, her voice carrying the enthusiasm that had slowly returned over the past month. Zoe says if we do it right, we can add a zip line to the oak tree next spring. Absolutely not, Alice said automatically, then caught herself. These weren't fully human children anymore. Their werewolf heritage gave them enhanced balance, strength, and healing abilities. Maybe a zip line wasn't the danger she imagined. We'll discuss it with your father, she amended, and was rewarded with cheers from all 5 kids. Alice settled onto the porch swing, watching her children work together with the seamless coordination their pack bond had given them. They'd grown so much in 3 months, not just physically, but in confidence and ability. Zoe's dreamwalking skills had developed to the point where Dr. Vasquez was consulting with her about other traumatized werewolf children. Alex's affinity with metal had proven useful in pack security, and Emma's weather sensitivity made her invaluable for outdoor events. Bobby and Elizabeth had healed remarkably well, though they still had nightmares sometimes. When they did, their new siblings were always there, crowding into their bed, sharing dreams, offering comfort in ways that bypassed words entirely. Mommy. Emma called out. Can you ask Mrs. Rodriguez if we can have a sleepover in the treehouse when it's done? I'll ask, Alice promised. But only if you finish your homework first. A chorus of groans rose from the construction site, making Alice laugh. Some things never changed, werewolf heritage or not. Her phone rang, and she smiled when she saw Dr. Vasquez's name on the screen. Elena, what's the verdict? The psychological evaluations are remarkable, Dr. Vasquez said without preamble. Bobby and Elizabeth are showing resilience patterns I've never seen in trauma recovery. Whatever you and Dominic are doing, keep doing it. It's not us, Alice said honestly. It's the pack bond with their siblings. Zoe, Alex, and Emma have been their anchors. Pack healing, Dr. Vasquez mused. I'm documenting everything for the council archives. This could change how we handle werewolf child trauma. After ending the call, Alice reflected on how much her understanding of family had evolved. She'd once thought family was defined by blood and legal documents. Now she knew it was about choice, commitment, and the bonds that formed when people decided to protect and love each other unconditionally. A car door slammed in the front drive, and Alice's enhanced hearing picked up Dominic's familiar footsteps. The mate bond hummed with his approach, and she felt her pulse quicken the way it always did when he came home. In the garden, she called out before he could ask. Dominic appeared around the corner of the house, his business suit replaced by jeans and a casual shirt that made him look younger and more approachable. The children spotted him immediately and abandoned their project to rush toward him. Daddy. Elizabeth reached him first, launching herself into his arms with the complete trust that had taken weeks to rebuild. Look what we're building. I see that. Dominic's voice carried the wonder he still felt at having his children back, safe and happy. It's impressive. Very engineering forward. Zoe's teaching us about load-bearing structures, Bobby explained, hanging off Dominic's other arm. And Alex says he can make metal brackets that won't rust. And Emma knows exactly which days will be too windy for construction, Alex added proudly. Teamwork, Dominic said, meeting Alice's eyes over the children's heads. That's what makes a pack strong. Alice joined them on the lawn, and Dominic pulled her close with his free arm. The children continued chattering about their project, but Alice was content to lean against her mate's solid warmth and watch their family. How did the council meeting go? She asked quietly. Jake's appeals were denied. He'll serve his full sentence in supernatural prison, and the Shadow Moon Pack leadership has been disbanded. Dominic's voice carried satisfaction. The territories they were trying to claim have been redistributed to packs that actually deserve them. And Victoria? Completing her community service at the Supernatural Children's Hospital. Dr. Vasquez says she's been genuinely helpful with the younger patients. Alice nodded. Victoria's punishment had been controversial. Some pack members wanted her exiled or imprisoned. But Alice had argued for rehabilitation over retribution, and the council had eventually agreed to supervised community service. It was a risk, but Alice believed people could change if given the chance. She sent a letter, Dominic added. Thanking you for advocating for her. Everyone deserves a second chance, Alice said. Even people who make terrible choices. Dominic squeezed her closer. That's why you're a good Luna. You see the potential for redemption even when others only see the past mistakes. As the sun began to set, the children's energy finally started to wane. They abandoned their construction project and migrated toward the house, chattering about dinner and homework and tomorrow's plans. Alice and Dominic followed more slowly, hands linked, watching their pack family settle into evening routines. Through the kitchen window, Alice could see Mrs. Rodriguez directing the children and setting the table while Bobby and Elizabeth helped prepare a salad. Sometimes I can't believe this is real, Alice said softly. 3 months ago, I was scrubbing crayon off my kitchen wall and texting angry messages about child support. 3 months ago, I was a workaholic billionaire who thought the mate bond was a fairy tale, Dominic replied. Funny how wrong we can be about our own lives. Alice's phone buzzed with a text, and she glanced at it absently. Then she started laughing. What? Dominic asked. Alice showed him the screen. The message was from her old landlord. Your former neighbors are complaining about noise from your old apartment again. Mrs. Doro says to tell you the new tenants are even louder than you were. She misses having werewolves in the building. At least you were house-trained. Mrs. Doro knows? Dominic asked, eyebrows raised. Mrs. Doro has always known everything that happens in that building, Alice replied. I think she figured it out when the kids started manifesting abilities. And she's fine with it? She says werewolves are better neighbors than most humans. Quieter, cleaner, and they don't leave trash in the hallways. Dominic laughed, a rich sound that made Alice's heart sing. Should I be insulted that we've been reduced to our housekeeping skills? Mrs. Doro judges everyone by their housekeeping skills, Alice said. It's the highest compliment she can give. Alice typed back, tell them the werewolves moved out, they're someone else's problem now. Are we someone else's problem? Dominic asked, reading over her shoulder. We're someone else's blessing, Alice corrected. This pack, this family, we're blessed. Dominic growled playfully and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around on the porch while their children's laughter echoed from inside the house. Alice threw back her head and laughed, feeling the pure joy of a life she'd never imagined possible. When he set her down, they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the lights come on in their home. Through the windows, they could see their children, all 5 of them, gathered around the kitchen table, heads bent together over homework and art projects and whispered conversations. Our territory, Dominic said softly. Our pack, Alice agreed. Our family. Alice leaned against him, feeling complete in a way she'd never experienced before. The mate bond hummed between them, connecting not just the 2 of them but extending to encompass their children and their pack and the home they'd built together. A car approached up the long driveway, and Alice automatically tensed until she recognized Marcus's distinctive engine sound. Even after 3 months, unexpected visitors still triggered her protective instincts. Marcus emerged from his vehicle carrying a manila envelope, his expression serious enough to make Alice's stomach clench. Alpha, Luna, he said formally, which was never a good sign. This arrived through official pack channels. It's marked urgent and confidential. Alice took the envelope, noting the elaborate wax seal and formal calligraphy addressing it to the Luna of the Blackwood Pack. The return address was blank, but the paper felt expensive and official. Should I open it? She asked Dominic. It's addressed to you, he said, but she could feel his tension through their bond. Alice broke the seal and unfolded a single sheet of heavy paper. As she read, her blood turned to ice. To the Luna of the Blackwood Pack, congratulations on your recent mating and the integration of your children into the Blackwood territory. Your handling of the Morrison situation was adequate, though perhaps not as final as one might have hoped. You should know that Jacob Morrison's escape from supernatural prison last week was not the random security failure it appeared to be. Certain parties have taken an interest in your unique bloodline, specifically, the heritage you inherited from your grandmother, Evelyn Nightshade. The Nightshade line carries power that most werewolves can only dream of, and there are those who would see that power properly utilized. Your children, carrying both Nightshade and Fenris blood, represent possibilities that extend far beyond simple pack politics. Enjoy your domestic happiness while it lasts. We will be in touch when the time is right. A friend Alice's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the paper. Jake had escaped. Someone knew about her grandmother's true identity. And her children, all of her children, were being targeted for their bloodlines. Alice? Dominic's voice seemed to come from very far away. What does it say? Alice handed him the letter and watched his face go granite hard as he read. Through their mate bond, she felt his alpha instincts surge to life, protective and deadly. Pack the children, he said quietly. We're moving to the safe house tonight. Dominic, someone's been watching us, studying us, planning this. His gray eyes held flecks of gold. And they know things about your family that we don't. Alice looked through the kitchen window at their 5 children, still bent over their homework, unaware that their world was about to change again. They'd just found peace, just learned to feel safe. We'll protect them, she said, as much to convince herself as him. Yes, Dominic agreed, pulling her close. We will. Whatever comes next, we face it together. But as Alice watched their children through the window, her babies who carried bloodlines that made them targets, she couldn't shake the feeling that their quiet happiness had been too good to last. The real fight was just beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more.